All right, going live in three, two, one. Well, this is the Working Title Experience, episode number 17. And for this evening, we have Selena on. Hello,
Hi
Selena. How are
guys.
you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing okay, except for a little bit of an allergy attack. So I might be coughing a little bit this evening. Hopefully, not too bad.
That's okay. No worries.
So Selena is going to be coming on. She's going to be doing some nice little podcasts for the channel, and I wanted to bring her on, and introduce her to everybody, and tell you what she's about, and she'll tell you what she's about as well, and what kind of show she's going to produce, and we'll get a little background information about her as well. So Selena, tell us about yourself.
Okay, well, where do I start? Well, I'll give you the rundown and try not to get too wordy with it. I am from New York originally, born and raised in the city. So I'm through and through a city girl. And a little over a year ago, I took the plunge and I moved to Arizona, which is total culture shock in a lot of ways. And so since I have been here, I and I'll touch back on a couple of things about New York City as well. But basically, what brings me here in front of you guys right now is that I decided to completely sort of change the trajectory of my career path, my life. I left my very secure corporate job and decided to focus on a very different area, which is sort of the counseling, healing space. And I decided that this would be a really kind of a fun, interactive, cool way to get my message out there and get to know a lot of people and hopefully, ideally, help people, of course. So that's kind of why I'm here right now. My background is generally in hospitality. For about 10 years of my life, maybe a little bit less, I worked managing bars, event planning. I was a pretty badass bartender, I have to say. I do know how to make a good drink. And after a while, I sort of realized that that wasn't something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I got this opportunity through a friend who was like, why don't you come work in tech sales? And I was like, because that sounds boring to me. And I was like completely disinterested. But it turns out that I was very good at it. I took a shot with that company and I did that for several years. And finally, again, what brought me here is I realized it wasn't really doing anything to fulfill my purpose. It wasn't making my soul sing. So I took a couple of big risks in the last year and a half of my life, but no regrets. So what else do you want to know?
I want to know how you're able to hide that New York accent of yours if you're from New York.
I never had a New York accent. I grew up in different parts of Long Island, and then I moved to Manhattan. But I think that when you're born and raised in a certain borough of New York or New Jersey, you tend to adopt this kind of accent. You know what I mean? So yes, I can bring it out. I can definitely bring it out for you, but it comes out if I have like two martinis. But normally, and it also has a lot to do with where you went to school, what area you were brought up in, things like that do matter. So yeah, mine's pretty even keeled. I'm good in that department.
So now you said you were a bartender. That you did it for 10 years. I mean, was it hard? Would you say hard, easy, fun? How would you describe it?
Oh my God, it was all of those things. I threw myself into it. So I went to school for marketing. So my college education was like, P.S. I don't think people should be allowed to even go to college till they're like 28 because nobody knows what the hell they're doing when they're out of high school. So I went to school for marketing, which, okay, good, right? Useful enough degree, but I didn't really pursue anything that I was really, really into. And when I was with my very first boyfriend ever, he was working in a bar and he was like, hey, like they kind of need people. Why don't you come give it a shot? And I made myself these little cue cards, these little cheat sheet cue cards of how to make like all the most common drinks. And I hid it behind the register so that they wouldn't know that I was a total rookie. And I kind of went for it. I just like jumped into it. And it was really hard at first. It was really scary. People were very loud and drunk. But yeah, cut to like a few months later, I just got into the swing of it. I started to really, really love it. I gotta tell you, I've met some of the smartest, most interesting people I've ever met in my life doing that kind of work. I have been so exposed to so many different groups that I'm really grateful for it, honestly.
Now,
Yeah.
as far as the drunks, I mean, did you ever? I mean, were there bouncers that were there to protect you, or did you were you able to fend them off yourself, or how'd that go?
Oh, good question. Actually, when I first started bartending, there were no bouncers. This was also before, I don't know why there weren't any, but I worked in the areas I worked in were pretty decent. There wasn't too much going on in terms of crime or any activity or anything that would be too bad, like at that time at least. But it was, in hindsight, it's a little scary. I mean, I was working until 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning, and I was this like young, very young, kind of like tough girl, thinking I could sort of take care of everything. But I was opening and closing by myself, and I had no help. And there were a couple of times where there were some scares. So we didn't have weapons behind the bar. It's not legal in New York anyway to have a gun. But we had a baseball bat, and then of course my cell phone in case I needed to call for help. So it wasn't until the last couple of bars I worked in, which were more upscale, and I was sort of managing those bars anyway. So that's when there was security. But initially, no, I was on my own, and I guess I'm pretty lucky. Nothing happened. Yeah.
So as far as like with all the people and all the different kinds of all the different gifts, different kind of what's the word I'm looking for? All the different people you've met. Do you feel that you can really read a person pretty well at this point, psychologically?
Yeah, yes, I do. It's a big reason why I got into the field that I'm in now, the field that I'm pursuing, which is coaching, mentoring, counseling, the field of it's basically a sub genre of psychology, like working in hospitality, and anybody will tell you this, and I think retail is also one of these industries where you really get to see the worst in people and see the best in people. It shows people's true colors. It's very telling. It's ironic phrasing, but it's very sobering to be a bartender or a person in the industry serving, because you see people go from being polite, kind, and cordial and sort of appeasing to their true colors coming out after they have too much to drink, which is a lot of the time the real you, unfortunately. Your feelings and emotions are often so amplified. If you're happy, you're happier. If you're sad, you're sadder. If you're angry, you're screwed. You're putting your car through windshield windows. But yeah, I got a really good sense of people and how they act and how to read their body language, how they make eye contact or they don't make eye contact, and the tone of their voice. It's kind of like over time you learn to become this like human lie detector. Like you can see through people's bullshit pretty well. Maybe not everybody can do that, but I think at this point I'm pretty intuitive to it. It's been years. And so now going into what I'm doing, trying to sort of counsel and coach people into whether it's going through addictions or depression or just day-to-day bullshit, dating, relationships, anything, you name it, try to kind of help them navigate that. That sort of experience for me, I think came in far more handy and valuable than if I was just to kind of mechanically go through like a few years more of like academia. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And as far as what you're saying when you're helping people, I mean, what is this? What you're referring to as when you're doing podcasting? Is that what you're saying?
It's going to be a part of it. This is a new sort of venture for me. My main forte was in writing, and I mean, I've done recordings and podcasts here and there, but to be honest with you, I realize, especially during COVID, that now this is sort of the platform. This is the thing to do. And it's not about exposure and fame or followers or whatever you want to call it, but this seems to be the most effective way for me to reach people who are like-minded and who might need somebody to sort of help them in a way that I can help them, because I'm not going to sit there and charge you $150 an hour the way that, a traditional, and not to take away from that, these people are highly trained professionals, and my kind of focus is a little bit different. My way of working is more mentoring and coaching rather than, sitting there and doing talk therapy for 10 years of somebody's life. I'm a little bit more sort of like bulldozing to get like results. So that's kind of what I do. And that's the difference between coaching and therapy. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be a part of the podcast for sure. I want to bring that into it, but I don't expect it to be this sort of hyper serious, like, okay, like, let's get to work. I'm going to tell you guys what to do to live happy lives sort of thing. It's going to be fun. I want it to be really, really engaging and interactive. And I want my viewers and listeners to be able to ask me anything and sort of come together and meet each other even in the comments and during these sessions, and sort of build a community, like a safe space where nothing's off limits. You can talk about anything you want and we're going to discuss it. There's no judgments. That's one thing about me that I think that I really like. This is a quality that I really like about me, is I really don't judge people. Like, everybody judges a little bit, and I get that. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like acceptance is really big, and it's really important in the line of work that I'm in, or trying to go forward in. And so I just want to keep it. I want to keep it very versatile. I want to keep it diverse, and I want to keep it engaging and fun. So nothing's off limits. And that's what the show is going to be. It's going to be me talking, me interviewing people, professionals, people who are also coaches, people who are friends of mine who have been through really, really interesting, some really toxic situations, and how they came out of it. And it's basically life, life virtually. It should be fun.
So we're talking. This is Selena for all the people who are coming on now. And
oh, hi.
she's going to be doing a regular podcast on the channel.
Yeah.
Start tomorrow. And now I do have a question about what you are. You're talking about things you want to talk about. Are there any other things aside from helping people that you want to talk about when you're doing?
Of course. We can talk about anything. I mean, I'm probably going to end up talking a lot about myself, which I don't want to. I'm not going to bullshit you. A lot of the stuff that I talk, and I don't want to. I'm not going to make it lengthy. I'm not going to sit there for an hour and spill my guts out like it's a virtual diary. But I would like to touch on some different things. We can touch on things. For instance, I like to still engage in a lot of the hospitality stuff that I used to do, right? So some of the segments and shows that I might do that might be a little bit different. It's going to be, how to pair certain cocktails with, certain plates or certain cuisines and that sort of thing. So there's going to be different components. I'm not necessarily interested in talking about my makeup or my clothes necessarily, but I definitely do intend on bringing a little bit more of my personality into it, even though it will be sort of more hyper focused on the relationships, dating, kind of navigating life, self-expression. That's going to be the general broad, whatchamacallit, like the sense of the show. But everything else, of course, there's going to be bits and pieces of other stuff in there. I mean, I want to keep it different and fun, and I want people to, it's not just appealing to women who are in their 20s or 30s or 40s. I want it to appeal to all the men out there who also have something to say. And I want men's perspectives on what I'm talking about. If we're talking about dating, for instance, I want those comments from the guys. I want their take on it. This is about communication and being able to come up with like answers together. And so, yeah, it'll be fun. There's going to be a lot of different stuff. It's all a surprise.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you something kind of blunt.
Yeah.
Why should anybody care what you have to say?
Yeah, good question. Excellent question. Well, the reason why anybody should care what I have to say is because even though there are millions of people out there doing or talking about the same stuff I'm going to be talking about. I believe that my way of delivering this information, conveying these messages, and relating to people is far superior than many people out there. Now, there are people out there that are doing the same thing I'm doing, and they're wonderful at it. And a lot of those people are inspiring to me. I take from them. They give me ideas. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like saying, well, there's a rock and roll band right here. So why should anybody want to listen to like this rock and roll band? Well, because it's similar, but the delivery is different. The melodies are going to be different. His tone of singing isn't going to be his tone of singing. And there's an audience for everybody. There's an abundance of people who can benefit from my experiences being a city girl, going through everything I went through, whether it's shit relationships, losing your parents, losing your job, going through the ups and downs of living in a very difficult city by yourself, and then coming here and starting all over when you're a complete adult and don't know what the hell you're doing, and somehow finding your way and finding your voice. I think it's relatable. And I know people are going to want to watch it because, frankly, it's going to be fun. I'm not going to read you guys like scripture or like, it's not an educational podcast. It's an interactive, fun podcast, and you can talk about anything you want. And I'm not too worried about that.
Sounds like fun. I hope everyone tunes in for this.
I do too.
Now, I do want to ask you. You said there was a transition when you went from New York to Arizona. What was that like? Was it really drastic for you? How did that go?
The allergies were hell. They still are. I've never experienced allergies as bad as I have in Arizona, so that's one thing. But if I were to make a pros and cons list, which I often do because I'm a very visual person, the pros far outweigh the cons of being here. And I think the main thing that I had to get used to was not being able to walk out of my apartment, hang a quick left, stumble into a bodega for a drink or a sandwich, stumble left to get on a subway. You can get anywhere in the entire boroughs, like Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, Manhattan, 275. You can get anywhere all day. You can ride the subway. It's wonderful. It's my favorite thing, and I miss it. So driving is what I'm adapting to here instead of taking subways and taxis everywhere. And other than that, I think it's just the people. They're not as loud, and they're definitely not as blunt. So I've had to tone it down myself. I'm a very nice person. Like I'm friendly and I'm bubbly, but I'm loud. So yeah, little adjustments here and there for sure, but it's a wonderful place. I love Scottsdale. Great weather, dry, 86 degrees, no complaints.
How long have you been there? How long have you been in Arizona, in Scottsdale?
About a year.
So you were there last summer. Does it get really hot there?
Yeah, last summer was actually record breaking. We went up to like 120, which was insane because that was even too hot for Arizona. Apparently, it was my first experience, but it does get really hot. But I think people tend to freak out and exaggerate the heat in Arizona. I don't mind the heat in general, but the thing is, when I was in New York, it would be, let's say, 85 degrees, but humid. And it felt like absolute garbage. I mean, it was just, it inflated it so much more. Whereas here, if it's 100 degrees and dry, it actually doesn't feel that bad at all. And everyone here has a pool. Like, it's just kind of standard that every apartment complex, every house, with very, very few exceptions, it's very accommodating to human beings. So it's not that bad.
I do remember the heat wave. That lasted for like a month or so, didn't it? It was pretty bad.
It was over a month. It was really intense. I mean, I looked great. I got such a tan. Oh my God. It was fantastic on certain days, but overall, it was a lot. It was too much. I'm hoping that this year we don't get hit with anything above 110. I can hope for. We'll see.
I can't imagine, even without the humidity, 120 degrees. I mean, how can you even stand being outside for that long?
We weren't. You weren't supposed to. Everybody
Oh,
was advised to stay inside. They were like, turn on your air conditioners, stay in, hang out. Everybody was just, yeah, the air conditioning systems were actually overworking so much. It was crazy. You know, again, Arizona is very accommodating to the heat. All the apartments and houses, the way the infrastructure is, I guess, the way they're built, it's almost like they keep the heat out. The walls feel different here. Everything is just like the houses get sunlight, of course, but it's almost like they're built in a way that you don't get hit with too much sunlight during the day at once. It's only in certain rooms. I don't know. I'm not an architect. I don't know how to explain it, but overall, it's surprisingly accommodating. If I were to suggest, and it's one of the most livable places statistically speaking, is it where I live, particularly Scottsdale, Phoenix area, very livable, very cost efficient. Honestly, like it's fantastic, and I love New York City. I'm always going to be that girl. But I got to tell you, I have unless something really amazing happens where due to work or something like that, if I have to move back, it's one thing. But on my own, I don't think that'll happen again. I would rather be a tourist.
Now, I do want to ask. I mean, this is getting a little it's off really not in the realm I want to go to, but I do want to ask anyway.
Yeah.
Is Scottsdale, is that in the desert, or is that in the or is it wooded area? I'm not sure what that is.
Scottsdale it's in the desert. I mean, well, when you say wooded area, I'm trying to figure out.
The northern section of Arizona has a lot of forests. That's why. And so I wasn't sure which part of Arizona that was. That's why. I know
see.
The southern part is more desert. The northern end is a lot more forests. So
we are in the southern part.
Okay. I didn't know. Okay, gotcha. So
Yeah.
That's interesting about the allergies. You think like in the desert you wouldn't have that many allergies?
You would think so, but you're wrong. You'd be wrong. I am experiencing them every day, and I'm more used to them now. But it's it's an adjustment for sure. I have like nasal spray in my purse all the time. It's like, oh my god, it's crazy.
So what now? Did you mention you may talk about food? Is that one of the things you said you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, because I have a pretty strong background in Well, my background is more in libations. So it's not so much that I am a foodie in the sense that I know how to cook so well or prepare food so well. I love to eat. I mean, I'm a foodie in that way, but I think it's more that I would like to take. So I'm a big fan of putting out certain things like crudités, charcuterie boards, and then my favorite thing is like when I have guests over, for instance, I love hosting dinner parties. So one thing I like to do is pair my meats and cheeses and veggies and whatever I'm putting out with specific cocktails that would complement that. For instance, certain tequilas or mezcals that would go well with certain fruits or anything that I'm putting out. So it might be kind of fun to put out little things like that, little tips and tricks, and also kind of give the viewers and listeners an idea of how to make these specific signature cocktails that I have come up with in the past. So if anybody is interested in that sort of thing, which a lot of people are, it wouldn't hurt to put that in there, because why not learn a new cocktail? Why not have a 5-10 minute segment of making something really yummy for the summer,
Yeah. Can you give us another example of what you're going to talk about?
To be honest with you, one thing that I'm going to focus on doing, and this isn't really talking about it, I guess, is I plan on bringing on a number of people to engage in conversations with me, and they will be I guess you could say that they're going to be interviews, because I plan on hosting and asking these people questions, but they come from very different backgrounds and they are doing very different things work-wise, but they all have in my opinion, they all have a very interesting and relevant story to tell. And one of them happens to be really funny guy, comedian, my friend Max, who I used to work with back when I was actually bartending, and he is really, really doing well for himself now, and he's hilarious. And so one of things like that, like bringing on people and kind of having that banter, kind of like I kind of want to give it like the Joe Rogan vibe without being Joe Rogan myself, because I'm definitely not Joe Rogan. But at the same time, it's kind of just like sitting there, having those conversations, making it really lighthearted, and just like, being able to just talk about things. And it doesn't matter what it is. And a lot of it's going to come from my viewers. A lot of it's going to come from the audience wanting to ask questions and learn about certain things, and come up with topics that we can discuss. So even though my forte might be food, drink, self-expression, self-expansion, therapy modalities, exploring different meditation techniques, things about well-being, and just things about navigating life no matter how crappy it gets. So that's sort of like what I'm going to be covering. But there's going to be a lot of different people and situations that come up where it's like, you're going to meet somebody that, is involved in a dance group who, is going viral now, and he's been doing this for 5 years. This other guy is a comedian, and, you might be interested in listening to him if you have any passion or any kind of desire to break into that realm of work, because all of these people started doing what they were doing when they were older in life. And that's really important to me. This isn't about kids coming out of college and, or being handed something. This is about people going through so many different industries in their lives and then finally landing on something that makes their heart sing, and that's important. And people, I think, will really benefit from that, because it gives you courage to see other people doing things, because we so often have these roadblocks and these doubts about, oh my God, should I? Or isn't it too late? Or how am I going to start? And that was me. And that's me every day. Like, I'm still there. I'm always there. But the whole point is getting through it, just like plowing through the uncertainty and just doing it anyway, and feeling how good that feels no matter what happens. And that's what we're going to cover. A lot of that, but little tiny intervals of bad jokes by me, and other things. We'll see.
Okay. Now, you mentioned meditation. You got me curious about that. Is that something you're into? Are you really into? I mean, obviously you are, but I mean, can you describe that? How you go through that?
Yeah, I sort of fell into it. I wasn't really somebody that wanted to practice meditation, or made it a point to do it. About maybe almost 10 years ago, I was going through a bit of a rough patch, and I had to move out of the country. My family lives overseas, and I went overseas to see my family, and I ended up leaving my entire life behind. And I had to stay overseas for quite some time. And long story short, I was going through a lot of stress for a young person to go through. It was just like a lot that I couldn't handle. I didn't know what to do. And there was a lot of grief involved. And one thing that I started to sort of realize is my uncle told me, he was like, listen, maybe you should try breath work. I was like, well, what do you mean? He's just like, honestly, it's as simple as it sounds. You just, give yourself 5 minutes. And that's a big thing. I want to touch on this just for a quick second. Sustainability in anything you do is huge. And I know that people talk about meditation and yoga and these self-help practices a lot, but it's very daunting and very it's a turnoff for a lot of people, because they think they have to commit this immense amount of time to it. And frankly, I didn't want to do that either. Nobody wants to start from zero and have to do something for 20, 30 minutes a day. That might not seem like a long period of time, but when you're trying to build a new habit, it is. So that's another thing I don't condone. I condone starting off very small. So for me, 5 minutes is what I let myself do. And I would do breath work where you're inhaling from the diaphragm and out the diaphragm. So it's like you're really utilizing this part of your body and paying a lot of attention to the breath, which is essentially meditation. Breath work and meditation are very, very similar. And basically meditation just became something that I started looking into after that, because I realized that the breath work was helping me sort of ground myself. So even though the stress wasn't going anywhere, the situations on the outside were still the same, everything was still the same, but I was able to deal with it with a clearer head. I wasn't necessarily having to do anything different other than giving myself the 5 minutes to just shut up and breathe. And I think it was Viktor Frankl who said, when you can no longer change a situation, you're forced to change yourself. And that was really helpful for me to realize, is like, yeah, I can do these little tiny things. And those little tiny things over time became bigger practices. So started meditating for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And it just became something that I did. And it became a way to start my day. And it was for me, it made a big difference. It kind of helped me pre-pave my path so that no matter what happened to me that day, whether it was, something in traffic, something at work, because shit's always going to happen, always. But this way, I was sort of armed. I had some armor and I had some mental clarity, and I wasn't going off the rails. I wasn't aggressive. So meditation is wildly helpful for any person in any situation at all. But getting started is always kind of like, nobody wants to do it. And I totally get that. That's why I say start very small. But I'm going to get into that. I have some tips and tricks and techniques that I would love to put out there, but that's a whole different video.
Are you still meditating today? Do you do it on a regular basis?
Yeah, I try to do even if it's only literally, if it's 5 to 10 minutes, whatever it is. I do it in the morning because I like to sort of get it out of the way, and I like it to be like the start of my day. So generally I will do it after coffee because I am a caffeine fiend. So I will have the coffee and then I'll sort of, go sit in a corner of my bedroom that's very kind of cool and dark. And I will set a timer and I'll put on something that's either guided, or sometimes I'll just put on certain sound frequencies that help you get into, beta, theta. So I'll do that. Or sometimes I'll just do it completely silent and just breathe. But yeah, I try to do it as much as possible.
What do you mean by beta theta? I don't know what that means.
Certain frequencies that allow you to reach certain levels of your brain. Like the delta wave is I believe it's one of the lowest waves you can get to. The one where you're sleeping. I want to double check that. Don't quote me on that. But it basically, when you hear certain frequencies and sounds, and there's a lot of YouTube videos on this as well that are just, they call it brain entrainment. So entrainment meaning they basically have these, 10 to 30 minute long videos of just certain vibrations, certain frequencies of sound that you might not hear because it might be under like a waterfall or like birds or something like that. But basically, while you're meditating to that, those frequencies are supposed to help you reach those deeper states of consciousness and relaxation. That's what that is.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So when you say like you talk about specific frequencies, like sound frequencies, like the sound that we hear.
Alpha, beta, theta. There's another one. Delta, alpha, beta, theta, delta. Yeah, there might be one more. I can't remember. Maybe your listeners know. I don't see anything. I was just like, hey guys, chime in here. But yeah, the frequencies and the hertz or whatever. I don't know exactly what that is, but what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the sound, the frequency of the sound. Okay, like for instance, another example is when you watch a scary movie. Sorry, what?
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to do that. I let something play accidentally. Sorry. We're good.
That's okay. No worries. Just as an example, also like another thing that's called infrasound, which some of the audio nerds might know about, which I used to sort of be like a little bit of an audio nerd. It's really cool. It's like what they use in certain scary movies to build suspense vibrationally in your body that you don't actually hear. So like when somebody's being chased, or it's like a really quiet scene and there's a lot of suspense going on, there's this very, 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 very low frequency of bass that you can't hear, but you can feel. And so a lot of the time, those are in the movies that we're watching. So that's really cool. But that's also similar to when you're meditating, certain frequencies activate certain parts of your nervous system and your consciousness and your brain. So it just relaxes you and it gets you to that state of being able to let go a little bit quicker than it would had you maybe not listened to it. It's sort of like a little tool that people use sometimes.
I gotcha. I didn't know about the movies.
Yeah, it's cool.
The lowest range that humans can hear is about 20 hertz, so that's pretty low. when you get down below 20 hertz. Do you know any movies specifically that do that? Because you got me curious about that now.
Yeah, I do. It's not. It's going to be a weird, random movie that I don't, and it's really it's a little obscure. It's called Irresistible, and it's a mystery suspense film. It's French with Monica Bellucci and Vincent Gallo. I believe it's from the 90s. Really intense movie, by the way. Not a date movie. Never showing up. Never showing on a date. My ex made that mistake. Super intense, but bottom line, it does have the infrasound. You can just go, like, I can't pull anything up right now personally, but if you guys Google infra bass or infrasound, you should be able to pull up some pretty cool facts on how our bodies react to sounds we can't hear because it's frequencies, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, obviously we can only hear a certain amount, and using those frequencies can ignite excitement, and it can make you happy, it can make you relaxed, it can make you scared, it can make you even depressed. So and I believe that people use that in music as well, certain songs. So it's really interesting stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so what else? I mean, do you have anything else that you're really striving to accomplish that you want people to know about?
I mean, like I said, my main goal is to create a space where I want to be somebody that people can rely on for their own accountability. So as far as individual or group coaching, that's something that I am doing it now, but I'd like to expand on that. But mostly I want to be able to share the things that I've learned through either my friends, my clients, my education, the books I read, anything you can imagine. I always want to share interesting facts and sort of ways to help people get through situations that are, even though they might sound generic, they're relevant, they're common, and they always happen. You know, like even something as simple as, you know, getting through a really toxic relationship or grief, you know, just like being able to navigate through losing a parent or a friend. And it's interesting because, you know, people, it's almost like during a grieving period, people make it about themselves. Like they want you to talk to them so bad. They want to know how you are. And it's like, once that period for them is over, and they don't know any better, but like it goes on. You know, people experience emotions very differently. Everybody's very different. And I feel like a lot of people don't know how to cope with a lot of things, and it brings on a lot of destructive coping mechanisms and addictions and just shit behavior that doesn't have to be there in the first place if there are people out there that are willing to just sometimes even just listen. Community that's out there that's willing to be a space, you know. And one of my main focuses is on navigating the dating relationship scene, cohabitation, and how those things can be fun but scary. And you know, a lot of the reasons why breakups happen is because people become attached and they lose themselves in relationships. And speaking from a lot of personal experience, and then coming out on the other side better for it, you know?
Yeah,
So that's a general tone. Yeah.
I got you. The people that you've actually talked to people, then you've actually tried to help them through.
Yes, I have. Because I'm currently in the process of, there are a couple of different certifications that I'm after, but basically I'm interested in becoming a certified trauma-informed coach. I've worked as a mentor, and actually, I shouldn't say I worked as a mentor. I've mentored in the past. I've done a lot of volunteer work, and I have had a couple of clients in the past year that I have sort of helped as far as helping them with their weight loss goals and being able to sort of lend an ear during the pandemic as far as depression was really, really, really prevalent and high this past year. I mean, people have been depressed since the beginning of time. But holy hell, the last 18 months have brought it to the surface. And I'm kind of glad it did, because it gave people a way out. It's like now people are able to be more vulnerable and ask for help and seek help that they actually need instead of bottling it up, you know? And I have had a couple of people that I've been able to be there for. And although I'm not technically working for myself yet, as in like I haven't made it a business quite yet because it's a new transition, this channel that I'm looking into, this podcast, the program, that's supposed to be about, it's a part of it. You know, it's bringing people together, bringing people in a space where they can share their voice, I can share my voice, and we can sort of ask each other questions and help each other learn. So it's like kind of a journey that I want to go on, but I don't want to go on this journey by myself. I want there to be those people around me, because even though this is technically a realm where I'm the one helping, they help me as much as I help them. I have learned so much from the people that I have been able to mentor, and the relationships I fostered with those people. I mean, it's very give and take. So I'm hoping to achieve that same kind of connection with new people doing it this way.
Cool. Now, I do have a question about people in general. Do you ever encounter people who are so needy that they just want to latch onto you and just can't let go, and they need you? They feel like they you have all the answers, and yet they just won't stop asking questions.
Yes. Yes, sir, I do. I've encountered a couple of people, one in particular, obviously completely not going to get into who this person is, but they really wonderful human being, but it's very important to create boundaries. This line of work, and even in friendships, I mean, this line of work, especially if you're trying to do this on a professional level, boundaries are like 101, like probably the first thing you should learn. But in general, yeah, there were some boundary issues, and because for me it was in beta, it's still sort of in beta. I was a little lax about that personally, and I think that I extended myself a little more than I needed to, and so it was a bit on my end as well. But there's always going to be people like that, and therapists face that a lot. Actual psychologists, the talk therapy people, you go sit on the couch and you pay them $10,000 a month. Those people constantly deal with things like boundary issues, attachment issues, transference, which is where you develop feelings for the person who's coaching or counseling you. It's very, very common because you're being vulnerable with them, and sometimes they're your only person in the world. And that's a lot of pressure for people like me, of course, but I believe that the reward is much greater. So you learn to navigate around it. There's ups and downs with every line of work, everything you do.
What do you say to people that when they go to see a therapist or someone when they seek help that they're like they'll say to that person, "You're crazy. Like you have to go see a therapist. There's something wrong with you. You can't deal with it on your own." What would you say to someone like that?
Well, are you asking me what I would say to somebody that came to me and told me they were crazy?
No, I'm sorry. Let me. I'll
Yeah.
So let's say someone goes to see a therapist, and a friend of theirs says, "What are you like? You can't handle things on your own? What are you crazy?" What would you say to the person that's calling them crazy? I mean, some people think that people going to a therapist they have too many problems, and and sometimes people that go to therapists won't even tell people that they're going to them because they don't want people to say anything bad about them. So, what would you say about people that are saying bad things about people that need help and they don't want to? Both from the perspective of the person that needs the help and the person that's basically that would mock them for doing so, or put them, maybe not mock them, but just belittle them.
I understand what you're asking. I think that the person that would be accusing the person in need or sort of trivializing their suffering clearly needs, first of all, they clearly would need help themselves 100%. And that's obvious, because when you are somebody that is lacking that level of compassion, and when you did, that is a very strong and high level of rigidity, narrow-mindedness. And that is something that is really detrimental, not just in friendships, but in relationships in general. You are only looking at things from your very, very convoluted viewpoint. And to that person, I would basically advise them that by saying these things to their friend, they are making their situation a lot worse. And I would ask them what their issue was with it exactly. What is so bad? What is so shameful about speaking to an impartial person about something that's bothering you, speaking to somebody that isn't going to take sides, just speaking to somebody that's a sounding board so that you could clear your head. I mean, God, therapy's gotten such a bad rep because of this archaic way of thinking.
Right.
And I would honestly, if I had the time and if I had the patience, and ideally, if I would ask them questions. I would just keep asking them questions until I got to the bottom of what their problem really was. Because a lot of the time it comes down to self-hatred. I mean, if you're going to be that cruel and dismissive and indifferent or insensitive with somebody else, a friend no less, then clearly you've got a lot of things on your own plate that you need to work out. And so I would treat them the same way that I would treat somebody that came to me and needed help. But I would never be accusatory or combative towards them. That's not the way that I work, and you can't get through to people that way. If people don't open up to you when you yell or accuse, they open up to you when you ask and wait. That's it.
Gotcha. Well, I brought that up because I've heard people say that, not in general. Sometimes people say if you have to go see a shrink or something, there's something wrong with you, and they may not even be friends with the person. They're just belittling people in general that do that. So that's why I want to bring that here to the forefront.
Newsflash, guys, there's something wrong with all of us. There's a lot wrong with me. The best shrinks in the world are the most fucked up people I know. Got to tell you that. That's facts. And I've seen my share. And some of the smartest, most influential people that I've ever met in my life have been some of the most screwed up people I've ever met. That's 100% in my experience true, and not just my experience, in a lot of people's experiences. So somebody that's going to say that about anybody, friend or acquaintance or stranger, that person is probably in need of more help than the person they're accusing. My dog just walked and I was like, what? Anyway, so yes, that is my answer to that. And obviously I'm being very, I'm giving you a very short version of how that would be dealt with, but that's kind of why I love this line of work. I love being inquisitive. I love figuring out like, why would you think that? Why are you being this way towards this person? What's going on with you? And why are you, it generally comes down to somebody feeling really lousy about themselves. It always comes down to something that you're hurting because of something that somebody either did to you, or you just have very low self-esteem. You have feelings of inadequacy, and you're projecting those feelings on people that are actually trying to get better. So that's what that comes down to.
No, now I got another question for you. There's this. I'm playing devil's advocate. Devil's advocate. Excuse me. What about the person that says I don't need to see a psychologist or somebody, a therapist? I don't need any help from anybody, but they clearly they're having problems because they feel like it's beneath them to do that. What would you say to those people?
You mean somebody that is clearly suffering from something and they're refusing to get help?
Right, exactly, because they feel like I can deal with it on my own. I don't need to see that. And someone says, "Why don't you go to a therapist?" And I say, "No, I don't want to do that. Why would I want to do that? I can do it on my own." Would you? Would you? How would you deal with a situation? Would you just? How would you go with that? Deal with that? I'm just curious how you would. How would you? If that person came to you and said, "No, I don't want your help." I mean, would you try to help them anyway in some way, or how would you do that?
Well, to clarify, I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not because I don't want to say that that would be false advertising. I am my section is more mentoring and coaching, which is different. It's not a completely different field, but we use different modalities and go about things in a different way, and it's a little more personal and with mentoring especially, but. To be completely honest with you, I'm not going to lie. If somebody clearly needs help and they don't want to get help, then my job or my role as a person in their life is to be very gentle and patient with them and not push them over the edge, because generally people like that will come around, but they're going to sort of need to. People often need to know that you're there, that you exist, and that you're not judging, and that you're open to whatever they may or may not need. So pressing them and trying to get them to do something is never going to work. providing them with options and just saying, look, I'm just going to leave this here. I think this would be really good for you. And I think we can do this together. Like, we could try doing this. This might work. This might not. Like, dropping subtle hints it's almost like you sort of have to, how would you treat a child who had a cut on their knee and didn't want a Band-Aid? You're not going to chase them around screaming because they're going to run away from you. You got to kind of handle it with more compassion than you normally would. And of course, you're going to want to help that person because you can clearly see that there's something wrong. Or even if you're not helping them, you're going to want to, maybe refer them to someone who can. But grown-ups are grown-ups. And a lot of people still are like that. And not everybody is going to want to get help. And the best you can do for yourself is to make yourself available. And that's what I try to do, even for friends. This has nothing to do with a profession. This is for friends. Like, when I know somebody's really messed up and they need something from me, or they need something in general, I'm going to offer what I can, but I'm not going to push it. I'll be consistent and I'll remind them, but I'm not going to push it because it never works.
So do you ever think about going the full route, getting a license or degree, whatever it would require to become like a full psychologist?
Yeah. I've thought about it, but I don't see myself going back to grad school at this point. And to be completely honest, I've had a lot of experience in this field on the other side. So one of the main factors that brought me to where I am today with you guys and telling you my story and what I'm trying to do is I've spoken to coaches and people who mentored me who were not psychiatrists or psychologists. Their main role in my life was to advise me when I needed, give me the support and encourage. Sometimes all I needed was one little bit of encouragement when I was feeling completely inadequate. I was having times where I was like the lowest of the low, and I didn't, just completely didn't even think that I could do anything with myself. This was a few years back. But the people that were in my life that pushed me to do what I'm doing now, the biggest moves I've made, the biggest chances I've taken, were always the mentors that I had in my life. They held my hand, they were there for me, and they didn't have to go and complete, 8 to 10 years of school for me to. I have seen actual therapists before, and they're wonderful people. I've been through it all. I've done the talk therapy. I've taken notes. Trust me, like, I've been doing homework since I was young on this whole entire realm of work. And sometimes coaches can take you a lot further. And even though education is its own reward, no trivializing academia, school's wonderful, but it will take up all of my focus. It will take up an immense amount of my time, and it will take up most of my immediate future. And what I want to do is focus on becoming certified in more niche areas of therapy where I can legally still practice, even if I don't have my doctorate. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are other ways to do it. I could, like, coaching is a huge thing. Coaching is massive. There are so many out there, and you can become certified. You have to take your classes, you have to put your hours in, and it's very similar to what you would get in therapy, but it's a little bit more personalized, and it's sort of categorically different where they have coaches for, let's say, careers, for addictions, or for weight loss. And for me, what I want to focus on is trauma-informed care and relationships. So that's a niche area. And trauma-informed meaning I want to get to the bottom of what's going on with you. I want to get deep down in your nervous system and figure out why this even happened in the first place, where we can sort of hopefully repair that from the root, rather than masking symptoms. Or, talk therapy is great for some people, but 10 years of talk therapy and thousands of dollars sometimes doesn't work for everyone. Sometimes you need a different approach, and that's where people like me come in. A little bit more personalized approach.
So tell our viewers. I mean, you've been talking about this. This sounds really serious right now. Do you have any lighthearted stuff you want to touch on?
Yeah, I would love to talk about lighthearted stuff. We can talk about anything you want. I'm a big fan of comedy, so I don't have any jokes on me right now. I can't think of anything. I'm like, okay, if you guys want lightheartedness, okay. Totally random. Not going to talk about this in my videos. I saw my first carpenter bee of the summer. I don't know if you guys know what a carpenter bee is, but they look really scary and they're super harmless, but they're like these bees that are, they kind of do this and they're big fuzzy black bees and they don't have very good eyesight. So they tend to like just go places not knowing where they're going and they'll smash into things and they like to hang out around wood. Like talking about it, I'm panicking. I freaked out today. It was so embarrassing. I'm like walking my dog and this carpenter bee comes around. I know it's not going to like kill me, but it is a bit of a phobia. So yeah, I had a few embarrassing moments earlier with that. But yeah, lighthearted stuff is great. We can talk about anything. You guys want to talk about movies? Let's go. We can talk about whatever you want. I'm not super keen on touching on, so like you said, like this stuff is serious what I'm talking about, right? So my hope is that I'm not really trying to touch on the really, really intense, very obvious and talked to death topics that everybody is talking about on social media, right? I don't want to talk about politics. I don't want to talk about technocracy taking over. AI, robots, that sort of thing, you know, like whatever. That's a whole topic that we can get into maybe one day that again, not super interested because it's going to get people really fired up and it's going to take away from like the lighthearted funness of what the show is supposed to be. So even though we're talking about therapy and counseling and you know, people having traumas and how to navigate like, you know, within dating and relationships and how to just become a better human being, even though we are talking about that, it doesn't have to be so humglum like depressing. It's supposed to be, you know, I want to be able to laugh about a lot of the stuff that I go through, and I do. I mean, a lot of it was embarrassing and a lot of it was really funny, and everything that happened brought me to where I am. So it's not about getting serious. It's just about speaking your voice and sharing your stories, and if there are things that are serious, then we will address them, you know? But I don't want the tone of this to be blue. Yeah.
I'd like to relay my carpenter bee story to you.
Okay.
If I rented a room for several years before I bought my house, and the guy who owned the house did not take care of it. There was a lot of repair that needed to be done that he didn't do. There were at least 5 other guys that lived there. We also each had our own separate room. I had my own separate entrance too, so I didn't have to worry about seeing other people.
Right.
But occasionally, it happened once maybe every couple of years. A big carpenter bee would get into my room and just start flying around inside.
Oh my
God! And this thing was looked like about at least 3, maybe 4 inches long. It was huge. It was like,
oh my God.
And it was like bright orange. This one was bright orange, and like you said, they didn't attack. It didn't attack me, but I was like ducking around and like, oh my God, how am I gonna get, you know, how am I gonna do this? And the landlord would say, oh, don't worry about it. They don't hurt anybody. And it was like, and I walked out the back of the house and I looked, and there was a big hole in the side of the house where there was a whole bunch of them just coming in and out of the house. So he didn't care enough that there was a whole nest of them, I guess, in the wall somewhere. And they would just eventually just seep their way into my room and I guess other people's rooms. And it was like, oh, they don't hurt anybody. So I don't really care if they're swarming around my house and around my tenants. But
that's not okay. That's like some New York slumlord nonsense. Like you're supposed to care. There's still bees there. That's an infestation. Oh my God, I'd be so freaked out. I had a flying roach in my Brooklyn apartment once, and I did manage to get rid of it, but I kid you guys not, I almost packed a bag, took my dog in the middle of the night, and it was like raining. I was going to go to a hotel or somewhere because I was so freaked out about these things fly like right towards you. And I'm not a big fan of killing bugs. I can't kill anything. I'm one of those people. I put spiders outside. Like I'm not a killer of the bugs. So, you know, and generally if I don't have to, I never will. But roaches are a whole other story. And the ones that fly, they're female. They're German roaches. The female German ones fly, and those are the ones that New York is infested with for some reason. And they come out in humid weather. And this woman, this lady roach, was just circling my entire bedroom, and I just completely freaked out. So I'm so lucky, knock on wood. Oh my God, I haven't had that experience. No negative infestation experiences in Arizona. So that's another reason why I love Arizona, because oddly enough, like we have things here like, like rattlesnakes and, brown recluse and all sorts of messed up little creatures that can hurt you. But that they're all out in the desert, in the depths of it. So like in civilization, normal areas and stuff, it's really great. There's like nothing out here.
And I was talking about flying cockroaches. Until a few years ago, I didn't even know they could actually fly. I thought that was just a myth or something. Ooh. And because I going back to my experience at that house I was living in, that house was also infested with cockroaches, but they never flew. And I was glad to get out of there, of course. But the house I have right now that I live in, occasionally I'll see a flying cockroach outside, and I'm afraid they'll get inside because I know they multiply very fast. But that was the first time I ever saw a cockroach actually fly. I was like, oh my goodness, so it's real. They actually do fly. And I was like, my experience is when I see a cockroach, they have to be killed immediately. I don't like to kill like you say. I really don't. But if you don't kill the cockroach, they infest bad. They can really, you'll have a major infestation really quickly if you don't get rid of it.
So is this what you meant by lighthearted? Because I'm like, okay, now we're not talking about trauma anymore per se, but now we all just have anxiety. So we're not out of the woods just yet here with your approach. But yeah, roaches are a whole different kind of scary to me. Not scary, but just kind of, they gross me out. And anyway, next topic. What else? You take the wheel here. What else you got for me?
What else would you like to? What else do you think you'll be relaying when your show begins? What else do you think you'll like to talk about?
I'll probably touch on stuff like I said. I spent a lot of time when I was in New York City doing theater. I was a theater nerd, so I have a pretty big appreciation for the film industry, and even though I never made it as a thespian, I have a lot of I'm a pretty big movie buff, especially scary movies. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to visit New York in June for the Tribeca Film Festival, hoping that they will be hosting it outdoors as usual. Really, really good time. If anybody's never been, I highly recommend going, and just go on the website, tribecafilmfestival.com, to see if it's like open and running and everything. But I think movies will come up a lot. I'm not somebody who's up to date, nor do I care about celebrity gossip. And I'm not gonna, unless somebody actually particularly messages me or comments and say, hey, I want to talk about Rihanna. It's like, okay, dude, let's talk about Rihanna. I got a few minutes. Let's go. What do you got to say about her? We can. But to be honest, most of it's gonna be I'd like to touch on a lot of differences also, like cultural stuff that I've noticed between living here, living in New York City, growing up there, living here, living abroad. I spent 8 months in Thailand. I've lived in Norway. I've lived in Turkey. I moved around a lot as a child, too much for a child. But what's really cool is I learned a lot of different things, got to see a lot of different cultures and interactions. And, there's going to be a lot of kind of culture comparing and talking about just things like that, and how different groups of people navigate things differently, and how we might deal with certain issues day to day versus how they might do things. Everything from relationships to the cuisines, and how kind of interesting that is. A lot of different things. We'll talk about everything. It'll be like a talk show. It'll be good.
Go back for a second. The film festival. What is that? Because I'm not familiar with that. Could you?
The Tribeca Film Festival is like it's independent movies that get submitted for that year from different up and coming directors, featuring new actor, or featuring new actors, old actors, doesn't matter. But it's basically exactly what it sounds like. It's an annual thing hosted in New York, and basically they sell tickets for the screenings, and you have certain venues that you can go see these screenings at, and they're usually these big outdoor theaters, and there's drinks, and it's only for a week. I believe it's like June 9th to something. I can't remember exactly, but it's kind of like, how the Grammys are. I mean, the Grammys don't last a week, but it's like essentially like one of those annual things. Only this one is more focused on independent films, independent horror films, which is like my favorite. Yeah, and they do a lot of Q&A. So when you go and see a movie, you get to hear the director and maybe some of the actors speak, and you get to ask them questions, and it's really, really fun stuff. It's kind of like, I love that about New York City. It's like, going to museums, going to art shows. It's like that sort of a vibe. But it happens in the spring, and it happens to be based only around new movies that like nobody has seen yet, and they're all independent directors. The new kids on the block, they get to submit all their cool stuff, and like the winners basically get to be premiered at this festival.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And if you guys ever are curious, you can just Google Tribeca Film Festival 2021. A lot of cool stuff on there. It's really interesting. There's a lot of fun stuff that happens. Hopefully, I know that there hasn't been as much normalcy this past year, but if everything is able to, hopefully they will be able to conduct it in a normal way, and it'll be fun. We'll see.
So do you feel, as far as what you say, normalcy over the past year, you going to touch on a lot of topics that you feel will be relevant for people?
Absolutely. I think the last 18 months, yeah, it's been pretty intense. And I'm not, it's so funny too, because I want to touch on the fact that, for instance, there's productivity shaming. That's a big one. Finally, people are sort of easing up on that, but oh my God, productivity shaming, which is if you go on Instagram or Facebook or anything or talk to people, LinkedIn is my favorite. There are so many little quotes and articles and posts about, oh my gosh, let's spend this time growing together. Let's spend this time becoming the better versions of ourselves. And it's like, listen, I'm not coming out of this thing that different. Like I went into this thing and I did a lot of self-medicating, and I did a lot of what the hell's going on-ing. And I did a lot of soul searching, and there were positive aspects that came out of it, which I am going to touch on in another video that I'd like to touch on. But I think that this whole, people trying to one up each other as far as what did you get done during COVID, it is so played out. It's so unhealthy. Let people live. If you stayed in your house and played video games the whole time, that's just who you are, and that's what you needed to do. Okay, like if you're minding your own business, then great. Like let people live is my mantra. It's like I don't appreciate when it's like the entire internet is flooded with all these like, what you could do, what you should do is pick up crocheting. It's like, okay, just stop talking. You go pick up crocheting. Why don't you let me sit here and be alone with my thoughts and just enjoy my ice cream or my wine? Like not everybody has to be coming out of this thing better for it. And we went through a massive period of isolation, and there are good takeaways. But at the end of the day, nobody owes you a good takeaway. Nobody owes you anything. And so that sort of stuff really pisses me off, to be honest. I don't like that way of trying to motivate people by shaming them. That's not how you do it,
So
rant over.
I mean, what about people who are doing things that are destructive though with their life? I mean, you're going to obviously suggest they do things differently there. I mean, how would you deal with something like that?
Of course, I would absolutely suggest that they take steps to deal with things differently. I mean, alcoholism and drug abuse and drug and alcohol related deaths, including suicides, have gone up massively in the last year. It's really messed up. It's really sad. There hasn't been that much awareness. There has been awareness, but it's too late. It's too late for a lot of people. I personally lost two, I don't want to say they were friends, but two people I grew up with. I lost one of them to a drug overdose, and the other one committed suicide. And it was really weird. It was really strange hearing that because it was about 2 months apart. And people are losing it. People have lost it, and they didn't have anybody to turn to. And if they were addicts, the addictions became worse. And if they were sobering up, they relapsed because the support wasn't there, because everything was over the phone or virtual. And so I really hope that coming out of this COVID situation, I hope that I hope that the bigger picture ends up being sort of I don't want to say worth it, but it's kind of like there were so many things that happened that sort of went a little bit unnoticed, and the whole rate of depression going up, suicides going up, drinking and drugs going up. That was some of that was things that those were things that did not really get touched on as much as they should because they didn't have a way to get touched on. Yeah, there were crisis lines and crisis counselors, but unfortunately, people who are already in that state are not going to take that step. They need that support existing in their lives. They're not going to reach out for it when they're already in that really dark place. And that support was sort of stripped away when that isolation was happening a lot of the time. And yes, I would advise and definitely go through different sorts of, I guess, if you want to call them strategies and steps to come out of those destructive behaviors. I myself went through a phase similar to that. You know, I was drinking more than I wanted to. And I was, you know, it was the time that we were first working from home. And I caught myself. I was like, this is getting a little out of hand. It's way too frequent. And I'm feeling depressed over it. Like and that was like mild compared to what other people go through. And that's another thing that I definitely want to help out with and touch on we're still in that situation. We're not completely out of the woods yet. A lot of us are either unemployed or just stuck at home with kids. Like there is no back to normal, and there's not going to be a back to normal, not the way it was. So going forward, that's something I definitely want to be able to reach out and try to help people with, even if it's virtual or over the phone, or being able to just check in on them and hold them accountable for things, for habit changes. Because the thing is, you can change these habits. These destructive behaviors don't have to take over your life. You know, neuroplasticity is our brain's way of being able to adapt to new situations, new experiences, you know, new learning experiences. And over time, bit by bit, even like I said before, with small implementations, 5 minutes a day, one small habit change a day, over time, those things accumulate and they help you change your entire life. So it's not about elimination. People always think, well, I have to eliminate the bad to get good. But I think it's addition. I think it's being able to add little things. You know, you don't have to change your entire life and eliminate all this stuff, and then you're left with nothing, and then you freak out and you go back even harder. Like, I know how this works. But it's more so about introducing small little habits into your life that eventually they replace the negative ones, bit by bit by bit. So you don't have to go cold turkey and stop unless you are in a position where your health is in great risk and you do have to go through like a complete detox right away. There are a lot of ways to learn how to rewire your brain to adapt better habits. And so those are things I'd like to touch on going forward in some of the videos I'm going to put out, of course. And they're not going to be lengthy because I'm not a big fan of boring anybody. So hopefully I'm not. Like, I want these videos to be informative, short, little Q&A. You know, any questions will always be answered. Comments will be acknowledged. You know, but I don't want to spend an hour, you know, talking about how to change a habit. You know what I mean? I'm going to make it as easy to follow, as simple and quick as possible. And I think that people respond to that better. I personally respond to that better. It's helped me more. So yeah, we will touch on those things.
Okay. Well, we do have a question from Dr. Z. How can one drink more than they want to? If you drink as much, you obviously want to do it.
By drinking more than I wanted to, I was drinking more than I would have liked to, because I wasn't stopping, because it becomes compulsive. Because when I'm sitting there with a glass of wine and I'm in my house and I've been in my house for days and there's nothing else to do and there's nobody to talk to, it's kind of like, well, let me go get another glass. And then before you know it, you're drinking more than you intended to drink in the first place. And at the time, you don't realize it because you're drinking. And this is very common. That's how people end up getting drunk. A lot of the time, you don't really intend to go out and have 14 shots, but it's a bachelor party and you take 14 shots and it's 5 a.m. and you wake up with a splitting headache. Oh my God, why? I mean, it's the same old, and it happens to a lot of us. And it happened a lot during quarantine because people had nothing. It was a much bigger vice for a lot of us than it had been in the past. It was easy, it was something to do, and it was a way to make ourselves feel better or forget that we have all this uncertainty surrounding us. So alcoholism skyrocketed, or even if it's not alcoholism, habitual drinking skyrocketed. Like developing that habit of drinking a lot skyrocketed.
Okay, so now some of our comments, they're actually in another language. Do
Mhm.
you speak any other languages?
And I don't speak enough or read enough Spanish to understand what they're saying exactly, but you can translate for me if you want.
No, well, there's no real questions. It's just basically saying, hola, how are you? Basically.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
I'm
Okay.
just, in general, though, if people had questions to ask you in a different language, what would you be able to answer those questions? I'm just curious because we do have this has a broad international audience. So, I mean, is this primarily, you're
I
basically,
would sorry to cut you off. I know I'm not supposed to do
basically it's going to be all in English is what you're saying, which we're going to have, right?
that. To be honest with you, I would prefer everything to be in English because I don't think I can convey information as well in any other language. I speak a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of French and Turkish because I'm partially Turkish, and I don't. Yeah, I think that would be it. But I would prefer if our listeners, watchers, and audience would hopefully just ask questions in English so I could answer them properly.
Okay, just curious. All right, well, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap everything up. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think I'm good for now. I'm sure I'll see you guys again.
All right. Well, Selena's shows will start tomorrow. We're going to have different shows. Try to have like a couple of days for you to watch, and then you can watch them and comment. And we'll have a way for you to contact her. If you don't want to leave a message, you can contact her directly through email. We'll have a special email set up for that too. So, all right, Selena, thanks for being on. And hang on for a second while we disconnect. And everyone, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.